Episode Bob buys the farm, Chloe lays one on Clark, and Lex's foreshadowing is enough to blind us all. This episode is Hug. Hi, I'm Lou Gonzalez, and with me as always is my co-host, Alan Muir.
It finally happened. We finally have our arch enemy, ain't Google. And Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I would say it's more Warner Brothers. They're weaponizing Google against us. But, apparently, images from a show from 17 years ago they're pissy about compared to whatever, is used for the CW shows. It makes no sense.
Yeah, apparently, even though our episodes aren't that long, I'm guessing they're thinking we're uploading episodes.
Yeah, I don't know. But there's a lot of episodes already uploaded online, so I have no idea. Maybe once this their deal with AT&T goes fully through, whoever's being a douche at Warner Brothers goes away.
My guess is that it's a YouTube, just simple YouTube bot.
Yeah, it's probably a bot or an algorithm. But they don't pick up on the comic book part, so we'll guess I'll be using images from that, unless we figure out something else. But we'll figure it out. But I guess on to this episode. I guess off the bat, this episode is called Hug. We were talking about it, just before we started recording. Nobody hugs anybody in this episode. The hug has nothing to do with their powers. I guess if they were to hug someone, bare skin, they could use them, but unless they're considering a handshake a hand hug, it doesn't have anything to do with the story, or, it has no connection to this episode.
Yeah, I was just thinking about if anyone, Clark, hugs someone as, to use his back as, a shield or something. I don't think that happened. No,
because he blocks a bat, he pulls Kyle out of the car, and then he just gets shot. But he's not shielding anybody during any of those times. I don't even think there are any hugs in this episode, period. But this is definitely an interesting episode. Like I said in the intro, there is so much foreshadowing in this episode for both, stories going further in the season, as well as just the overall connection, especially pretty obviously between Clark and Lex.
They could have just called this episode Touch, and everything would have been fine.
That would have been a much better name. Maybe they didn't want to, play with the idea of touching, although they do get into they have already gotten into weird sexual stuff, and...
Yeah.
Because this guy's basically what's his name from Jessica Jones, the Purple Man, Kilgrave. Yeah. Except he has to physically touch you to do it. And what's interesting, if you think about it, we'll get in, he's been doing this for, when was the meteor shower? 10 years ago?
11 or 12.
So, he's been doing everything he's been doing for over a decade.
Yeah.
So, you kind of think, I guess he would be big. He is pretty big, because he's a rival businessman to Lex.
Yeah, I think what was the guy's name again?
The character is Bob Rickman.
Yeah, Rickman, I'm guessing he started that company illegally with his powers.
Yeah, exactly. Which I guess we can explain, so we start this episode with our villain of the week, or media freak, Bob Rickman. He's the quintessential douchey, dicky businessman. He visits Smallville's fake EPA, which I believe they named, I have it here somewhere, the Center of Environmental Protection, so CEP instead of EPA, but that's what it, I guess, is supposed to be. I don't know about you, but at first I actually thought that was Lionel, because the guy has the exact same haircut from behind.
Yeah.
Whoa.
This is the guy, it's a guy who's on practically, he's like a background character who's literally just, he only has screen time for a minute or two.
Yeah, he's
practically everything he's on. I've seen this actor so many times, it's just...
Yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff, as well as our villain of the week. But basically, he tells Bob that he's going to stop Bob from building his plant in Smallville and anywhere else. He has a restraining order. Bob gives him the handshake of death and basically whispers into his ear. He doesn't say kill yourself, but he basically gives him all the motivations to kill himself, and then pieces out.
Yeah, because he says... You're doing all this work you're doing all these good things, yet you're basically getting nothing in return.
Yeah, because we actually only see the powers work, I think, twice in this episode, maybe 3 times. It's here, Kyle with Chloe, and then do we actually see them, besides the actual handshake part, do we actually see the talking again? Because it cuts away from Whitney, it cuts away from Lex, and I think it cuts away from Jonathan as well.
the only person who actually gets their when Kyle talks to Chloe, I'm pretty sure that's the only time we don't get a cutaway because Rickman does he like with the cop.
Yeah, it cuts away. And the same with Kyle with the other cop. It just cuts away.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's interesting if you take those two instances, like they don't exactly tell people what to do, they just kind of it's almost like subliminally planting ideas in their head. Because even when we get to it with Chloe, like he doesn't tell her to kiss Clark. He just says a bunch of stuff that would imply that she should do something. You know what I'm trying to say? Like he doesn't directly give a command. It's not like Chloe, go do this. It's kind of giving like building this kind of like implanting ideas into their head. Which is kind of much more interesting because, like, as it's a little bit more work than having to say someone to do something. You have to actually, like, kind of give them reasons to. So it's less mind control to me than, like, kind of like a deep hypnosis.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, like, you get what I'm trying to say? Alright, so moving on with our plot, we cut to Clark, Chloe, and Lana riding horses in the woods because that's a thing. Chloe is completely terrible at it, and she drops her camcorder that she brings everywhere. She was bringing it because they're going through the woods, and this is where the creepy hermit Kyle lives, which is obviously foreshadowing. Lana turns around to go retrieve it. Clark, they hear her scream. Clark jumps off his horse, hands the reins to Chloe, runs back and catches Kyle kind of like over Lana and scares him off, and he runs away into the woods. We do see that the camcorder is still on, and we get to see Clark watch the review over the tape, and we just get a glimpse of Kyle kind of looking into seeing if Lana's okay. She has no memory of what happened because she has a mild concussion, which for anyone that knows anything in like kind of sports medicine now, this was something that was very 2001 because they don't actually even use that terminology anymore. I don't know if you knew that, Alan.
Yeah, I knew because yeah, I won't go into specifics, but yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was like a funny thing to mention because, I'm listening to sports medicine stuff talk, like when people talk about it now, they actually get pissed when people refer to stuff as like mild or moderate or severe concussions because they don't grade them that way. I guess there aren't any grades on them anymore. It's just whether or not you have one or don't. But it was just funny to listen to. But basically, Aunt Nell thinks that Kyle attacked Lana and wants Clark to tell that to the cops, even though he didn't see any of that. And then we cut to actually Victoria and then Lex meeting Bob, and then Victoria leaves. This is her third episode, and she's only here for like 5 seconds. But Bob and Lex obviously know each other, and Bob is actually too slimy even for Lex, and Bob is planning to build the pesticide plant on the Kent's land.
Yeah, and Lex makes a comment basically saying that he's not going to get that because Jonathan Kent is a hard man to persuade.
Yeah, one of the issues I had here though was Bob said that he had just met with Lionel, and kind of giving the jab, like they're jabbing back and forth. But if he did actually meet with Lionel, wouldn't you just, and again, this goes to Lex later on.
Yeah, just use your power on Lionel.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just be like, sign me over your company? That's like way more of a big deal than building a plant on some shitty farm. I guess maybe that would be he would think that's maybe too obvious use of his power.
And very risky.
Yeah, but like I thought about it in both instances, like why is he not doing that?
Because of plot.
Yeah, exactly. But it could have been it could have been solved in like one line by Kyle of like, oh yeah, like you can't do certain things because they're too risky.
And we also get a bit more into why Lex is Smallville.
Yeah, well, he mentions that Lionel like banished him there for his like behavior and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, when Rickman talks about having met with Lionel, he says he did say you were exiled here.
Alright, and from here, Clark decides, or basically fights his dad a little bit that he should go and meet Kyle, because, Kyle can't actually do anything to him. When we get there, we see Clark finds evidence that the people from the plant, like what we had said to him, that they were there, and Kyle says he was just trying to help honor her horse through her, and he just wants to be left alone. And Clark kind of finds, strangely fast, almost kindred spirit in Kyle, which will kind of continue on throughout this episode. The next thing we see is, I believe, Kyle visiting Bob at his offices and warning him that, like, they had a deal and that he would leave Smallville alone. And then Bob,
that they had an agreement.
Yeah, and Bob kind of says something like, I've been honing my abilities for so long, and Kyle puts out his hand and says, okay, try me.
Yeah, and you see that Rickman just scared shitless.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, but it serves the entire plot of, like, so Bob can't he's afraid to challenge Kyle head on, so he goes through several different other ways to get rid of him by Roxy.
And they all fail.
Yep.
I kind of wish that he would have said, well, obviously, that when I doubt he would have said it because it hadn't come out yet, but the Joker's line in Dark Knight, if you're good at something, never do it for free.
Oh, okay. Alright. That would have been interesting. Like, there's definitely places in this, especially in this episode, where there could have been, like, some good lines like that, but I don't think Dark Knight came out in, like, 2007, something like that.
Oh, wait.
Alright, so back to the plot. Lex and Clark run into each other at the beanery. Lex warns Clark about Bob and that he has a knack for getting things that he wants and working around any sort of issue that befalls him. On the way out, where Clark is going to go see Bob, Clark runs into Kyle, who's leaving Bob's office. Whitney, after a kind of weird conversation that Whitney, Clark, and Lana have, sees Clark talking to Kyle and basically rushes in and threatens Kyle that if he goes near Lana, he'll kick the crap out of him. Clark decides to give Kyle a ride home and actually even to go grocery shopping, which was interesting, and then decides to drop Kyle off. We cut to Bob seeing Whitney pissed, and he does his handshake thing, and then we cut away. Clark drops off Kyle.
Wait, is it here that we first see the green eye effect?
Yes. Yeah, because we see Whitney gets the handshake from Bob, and then it cuts to his eyes where they turn green.
And we get a better shot of how that whole thing works later on.
Yeah. I think we only see it with the two, with Kira and with Chloe. I don't think we see it with anybody else.
Jonathan.
Okay, and Jonathan. All right.
That's where we get where it does a zoom in on his eyes, go in, and you see that it basically gives a...
Oh, like the brain synapses firing and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember which character they did that with.
It's weird that they got a better budget for this episode. Because I really like that effect.
Well, it's kind of the only they blew up another car in this, but...
What is with them in cars? Are they trying to say that ride bikes or take the bus?
I think it's just, like you said earlier on in another episode, that they're really cheap to buy and easy to rig.
Yeah.
And it gets to show, you can show speed and strength with a car. So there's lots of different ways to show, Clark's abilities with a car. But cut to, so after Clark drops off Kyle and he's driving back, he sees Whitney's car parked, several yards away, basically on the horse trail where they were before, and he decides to run back. We cut back to Whitney, or Kyle seeing Whitney through the reflection in his trailer. He dodges a baseball bat a couple times, and then gets the bat from him, and is about to hit Whitney in the head with the baseball bat, and Clark intervenes, and then knocks Kyle away. Next we see the cops show up, and they're putting Kyle into the back car, and Jonathan is talking to Clark and Whitney, and Whitney gives a story that Kyle came after him and that he was just there to talk, and Jonathan is like, why were you here in the middle of the night, Whitney? And says, Clark, is that what you saw? And Clark's like, no, when I got here, all I saw was, I did see Kyle with a bat, but I did not see how everything started. And he's like, I came back only because I saw Whitney's truck. And basically Whitney gets all whiny about this, that Clark won't back him up, and huffs off.
Also, how's Kyle not dead? He got either kicked or elbowed into a steel trailer.
He got kind of I'm trying to think of the right phrase. He got kind of palmed and shoved 20 feet in the air. Because I think it was a shove. If you were trying to separate two people. And he definitely flew into the the trailer door, but he would definitely be really messed up. But it's not I don't know, you would definitely be really screwed up. Your back would be messed up and you probably would break some ribs. But everybody in the show is super durable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna bring up the obvious Lex one, but then again, he's a meta.
Yeah. Alright, so the next thing we get is Clark, this is our only time we're at the high school. Clark asks Chloe to do some digging into Bob and Kyle because he had seen Kyle at Bob's office. But this is when we get the scene where Bob gets some manure thrown on his shoes. He gets one handshake with Jonathan, but he's wearing gloves, and inevitably the second one, which leads to the farm being sold and the great effect.
He kind of tricks Jonathan by saying that he twisted his ankle because of the shoes he's wearing.
Yeah, which I guess
he asks if Jonathan can give him a hand up, and then he uses his power.
Yeah, which is a thing we see Bob try to do throughout. He tries to, with Lex, he tries to trick people into shaking his hand. We cut to, I think it's I think it's the next morning when, like, Martha and Jonathan are talking to Clark that they sold it, and Jonathan's like, I don't know what happened. Like, I shook the guy's hand and I don't remember anything else.
Yeah, the next thing I see is a contract in my hand with my signature on it. And Martha is pissed.
Yeah, she is livid.
Yeah, it rarely happens, but it's just great to see another tool just angry.
And then the next thing, obviously, Clark is like, well, I know someone who will help. And then Jonathan's like, oh, we don't need Lex's help. And Martha's like, this is like the one time she's like, well, we need help from somebody. Like,
No.
we're in no position to deny help.
She says, like, you're out of something.
Like, out of options.
Either that or you don't have a say considering what you did. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but it was something along those lines.
Yep. So we see Clark go to the beanery. I think this is where he runs into Bob.
Yeah.
And basically Bob tries to do the handshake thing, which doesn't work on Clark, and Clark actually starts to crush his hand. And then they separate.
Wouldn't Clark it should have worked on Clark because it's from the kryptonite.
Yeah, but like, this is like the problem with like the meteor freaks is if they don't explicitly say why they have, like, where the kryptonite is. So, like, if you think of the Amy Adams episode, she was eating kryptonite stuff, but it wasn't until he was actually around it himself that it affected him. And the same with Bug.
It was in their bloodstream and stuff already.
Yeah, the only character that actually their touch affected him was in Jitters, because they actually explicitly said that the kryptonite was embedded in his skin.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like the rules that they're going with.
Well, considering this is the first season of this, they're allowed to mess with the rules and see what is and what isn't.
Yep. So after he gives the handshake of doom and Bob kind of pisses off, he gets an insane amount of shade thrown at him from Lana and Whitney.
Yeah, for saying that
Whitney's the one who started the thing with Kyle.
Yeah, and Lana basically tells him to piss off.
Mm-hmm. And then he goes and talks to Lex, who talks about it and informs him that the contract is ironclad, but they are getting 3 times what it's worth. Which I guess, again, thinking about Bob's backstory, if this is the way he's doing things, it's probably a way where a lot of questions aren't asked post.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But he says, like, he'll get his army of lawyers to deal with it, which will come back in a little while. And cut to where basically Clark says he's going to go talk to Kyle, and then Bob, after leaving the beanery, goes to his office and gets the deputy to come talk to him. And then we see Kyle in the jail, who says he has a visitor there, which I'm assuming is Clark. And then he handshakes the sheriff or other deputy.
A deputy, and he pulls a hitman.
Yeah, he takes his clothes. So the deputy that Bob interacted with shows up and starts shooting. Clark super speeds and grabs Kyle, but Kyle is still shot in the shoulder. And the deputy then unloads his entire weapon into the car they are, which if Clark had stayed there, I was like, how the hell is this deputy going to explain firing when there's an innocent civilian, like a underage innocent civilian there?
Yeah, it looks like Eddie Thawne was right when he said, you're not faster than a bullet.
Yeah, that's one of the things in this episode that, like, in this episode, Superman is not faster than speeding bullets. We still get a ton of bullet time in this episode, because I think we see it twice. And one time is, like, really extended. It's like a good 30 seconds of bullet time. But this is, like, right around when Matrix came out, the first one, right?
Yeah, because Clark is doing the Neo move.
Yeah, and failing. And then Clark brings Kyle to Lex, who has his rock and roll doc patch him up, and we learn some backstory on Lex.
Which I guess may come up in a future episode.
Yes, this gets to, like, the 2 kind of B plots going on, which is, the one is very short, but basically Lex's backstory with Club Zero, and we learned that Lex got stabbed at Club Zero, and that he was bleeding all over this doctor's back seat, and this also probably ties into the reason he has been exiled to Smallville.
Yeah, the episode coming soon with Cora and Nemec.
Yep, okay. And so the next thing we see is now, I believe we're back at the beanery. We're at the beanery a lot in this episode, but Chloe shows up with information that Bob and Kyle were salesmen, and that they were top salesmen 3 years in a row, and they were also trapped in a car during the meteor shower. I don't remember if Lex is with Chloe and Clark at this point, but he is in the next scene when they go back to the mansion, or the castle, whatever you want to call it, and go to confront Kyle, who is gone, and the nurse doesn't even remember.
Yeah, they then go to this trailer and they find that he's leaving, or he's preparing to get out of town.
Yep, and Clark basically challenges him on the fact that he's done nothing and he's allowed Bob to run rampant through the world, knowing all the things, and then Chloe demands to see a example of their powers in use.
Well, we get a good line between Clark and Kyle saying, have you ever had to hide who you really are? And Clark says yes, which Chloe apparently, she didn't get that. She wasn't listening apparently.
Yeah, well, I guess that could mean anything. And yeah, he uses his powers and gets, basically says, Chloe, you've always had feelings for Clark, but now you don't have to hide them anymore. And she turns and lays one on him, then turns back around and continues what she was saying before the handshake. Which was really interesting, like, that it was almost like she did her thing and then went back to, like, what she was right before it. So getting to see the whole circle of their powers is an interesting thing because they reset in such a way that it's almost
robotic?
Yeah, it's like robotic or like a time skip. Like they kind of like went back, like they got rewound for however time that was.
Damn it, Barry.
But I do think it is a good way to show and explain away what happens at the end of this episode. To actually show it here.
Yeah.
So they convince Kyle to turn on Bob and to get his story out there.
Of who he really is.
Yeah, of who Bob really is and about their abilities. At the same time, we see Bob confronting Lex, telling him, blah, 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 I give up, I see your lawyers, can we just, call a truce, and puts out his hands. And Clark calls Lex to have him pick the two of them up to go to Metropolis to get the story out.
Yeah, and then Lex says, at first, before he tries to burn them alive, he says that he has some friends at the Inquisitor and Daily Star.
It's Daily Star, not, he doesn't, because I know he doesn't say the,
he doesn't say the planet.
He does not say the planet, but yeah, I knew he said the Daily something. So I wonder if is that supposed to imply, is that supposed to imply like the Star City?
No, that was actually, I'm pretty sure that was a reference to original, like 1940s, 1950s, or the Superman radio show.
Oh, so it was before they called it the Daily Planet?
Yeah, before it was the Daily Planet, the original name was the Daily Star.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I know way too much about Superman.
Alright, so like you said, they get into the car, Lex auto-locks it, and I guess he has the child locks on the inside, so they can't open the door from the inside. He starts pouring gas over the car and does his awesome, lighter throw to the gasoline. Clark kicks out his door, rips open the back door, and grabs, Kyle and him. He speeds them away to safety, the car explodes, and then he speeds them away.
And Lex has like how would you describe the facial?
It's almost like
motion or thing he does.
Like he's almost like deadpan or like robotic. Like he's very emotionless. At least that's what I got out of it. He's saying a lot more than he's doing. He's to me he came off like zombie-ish / like almost a little like jokey in a weird way. I don't know. How did you see it?
The way I saw it was, I can only describe it as, well, look, what do we have here? Because he sees it, because obviously he sees them Clark beat away with Kyle.
Yeah, I can't, maybe I have to rewatch it, but I thought he was more deadpan about it, but I definitely thought towards the end of his statement he was like smirky.
He was deadpan when he goes to find Kyle and Clark, and especially when he says, I'm a perfectionist.
Oh, yes, to Bob. So, yeah, they run away. Bob shows up, and Bass is like, what the hell's going on here? And he's like, you didn't get the job done. And Lex is like, oh, yeah, I'm a perfectionist, don't worry. And Bob hands him a gun after rubbing his own fingerprints off of it, which is like a submachine gun of some sort.
Yeah, it looked like a submachine gun or an Uzi or something.
Yeah, something similar to that. So Lex goes off hunting. He finds Kyle pretty much immediately and gives like his whole speech about how Clark has been hiding stuff.
Which they do time and time again. Get ready, folks. It's going to get played out soon.
And he says, like, I knew that you were hiding something. I just didn't know it was this good, I believe is basically what he says. So he kind of throws Kyle to the side immediately and doesn't care about him. And immediately just starts shooting Clark when he comes out. And Clark dodges 70% of the bullets, I would say. And this is our long bullet time sequence. But he eats like, I would say like 7 shots.
Yeah, and I may have been mistaken, isn't Lex laughing while he's doing the whole shooting?
Kind of, I believe so. This is where he switches from deadpan to almost enjoyment. Yeah, like a comedic kind of jokey. It is definitely interesting and more menacing. And I think after Clark goes down, he basically goes up to Clark to kind of finish it off. And does Clark just kind of like hit him away?
He kicks him, or he's on the ground. Lex is gonna think kill him or shoot him, try shooting him again. And he gets kicked into a bunch of shelves.
And is knocked out, basically.
Yeah, mild concussion.
Exactly. So then we cut to Kyle's actually now outside and he confronts Bob.
Well, you see Bob take a gun out.
Yes.
And you just see a hand grab him.
Yeah, a big ass handgun. And you see them go back and see, you see like, I think that kind of green hand thing that we've seen in this episode. And then Clark you hear a gunshot and then Clark zooms out.
Well, you see a gun turning, like
turning towards, it's kind of turning up though, like towards someone's head.
Yeah.
And it cuts back to Clark checking on Lex. And then you hear the gunshot, then he zooms out, and then you see Bob on the floor bleeding.
No, dead.
Well, yeah, there's blood all over his shirt. You don't really see his head, you just see, like, his head is just, like, far away from the camera, but, like, his white shirt is all red.
Yeah, and Kyle jokes about it saying, I was always the better salesman.
Yeah.
Because, and I can't believe we forgot to mention this, but there's a bit of exposition given about them pre-powers. They were the worst salesmen ever. Like they were complete jokes. And once they got the meteor rock powers or kryptonite powers, they were having fun with it. Bob went too far, and Kyle was scared that he would be unable to fully control it. Which this episode, again, foreshadowing its parallel between what will happen soon with Lex and Clark in some different ways.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like, all the foreshadowing we see at the end of the episode addressed. We see Kyle does, I wrote down, like, he kind of pulls a 70s Incredible Hulk and just kind of decides that he's going to walk the road, fade off into the distance. And then we see...
He says he's gonna start doing some good after he gets out of Smallville and gets basically anywhere where he can just simply do good.
Which kind of makes him our first other sort of superhero in this world that we never see again.
Yeah.
Because they never really bring him back up, but he's out there in the world shaking people's hands for justice.
Yeah, and I was like, when I first saw this episode about, I want to say, 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't know who he was. Like, he was just some actor. When I watched it again, like earlier, I noticed, hey, this guy looks familiar. Apparently he was on True Blood.
Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. He was on Little House on the Prairie. He was on True Blood. He was in American Horror Story, Sons of Anarchy. He was on Agent Carter.
Yeah, as Otto Schmidt?
It says Otto Mink.
Otto Mink.
Yeah, he has definitely a lot of geek creds. The same kind of goes for, or not geek creds per se, but Bob is played by like another character actor that I've seen a million times over. But he was also in Heroes.
I'm not surprised.
Yep, and he was in like a bunch of stuff. Oh, he was also in Agent Carter as well. Interesting. He played a doctor. I saw Agent Carter when it came out, so.
Yeah, did you ever see season 2?
Yeah, I saw season 2.
Yeah, I only saw season 1. Never got around to season 2. Is it worth going back?
Season 2 is good, but not great. There's a lot more. If you like the Howard Stark character, then you'll like season 2 because he's in it a lot. But season 2 gives, especially since that TV show is much more connected to the MCU than anything else on TV. Like, it's the most connected because it's a character from the movie. Season 2 delves into a lot of stuff that we have seen in the MCU. I'm trying to do this without doing any spoilers. But we do see like a big time, I think we see like there's like 2 comic book villains in it, and one of them is kind of a big name in it as well.
Yeah, I remember. Is one of them portrayed by the dad from that 70s show?
No.
Or he's like an ancestor to one of them?
I'm trying to think. I don't remember him being on season 2.
Kerwood Smith?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Because the big bads in it are trying to find, like, a look at the cast. IMDb.
I remember Madam something.
Yes, that's the main villain. Madam Mask. I don't think they ever specifically call her that, but that's who the character is.
Yeah. Okay,
and then,
back to Smallville.
The one last thing, the guy who played Bob, Rick Peters, is also in the Aquaman pilot.
Interesting.
He plays an admiral. So I guess they liked him enough in this, because I guess it was made after this. No, this was 2001, right?
Yeah.
So they made the pilot just in '06, so like 5 years later. Oh, and you were right, the guy from that '70s show was on it. I now remember that character. Yeah, he played Vernon Masters. I think he was like a senator or something. He was some sort of politician that like was in control of, I can't remember what SHIELD was before it was SHIELD that they have in the show.
I think
It's like SAS or something like that. It's not SAS, but it has like a name like that. I can't remember.
SSR?
That sounds correct. Yep, you're right, SSR. Strategic Scientific Reserve. Alright, we still have like 2 little things left in this episode, which is we see Clark without his shirt, and we see that the bullets just caused some bruising. Lana comes in, and they basically make up, and then we see Lex arrive in the loft, and says that basically because of the way that Bob died, the corporation is tearing up the contract with the Kents, and everything is back to normal, and that he has no memory of anything, and then he asks if Clark is fine. And then Clark says, Kyle and Bob were such good friends when they started. Do you think it will ever end up that way?
Yeah, trust me, Clark, our friendship is going to be the stuff of a legend.
Yep, and that is our last line of the episode. There's one other little part that I guess I kind of skimmed over, which was the whole Lana, Clark, and Whitney thing. It was a B-plot. It was really annoying. But the only part of it I really enjoyed was when Lana showed up, I believe, at the loft to say, like, oh, she heard Kyle broke out, and she was, like, scared. So one, instead of going to Whitney, she goes to Clark, and that she still doesn't understand why Clark believes that Whitney could attack Kyle, and Clark basically goes, well, he strung me up in a field. And Lana's kind of, like, taken back because, yeah, that is pretty violent. And then her response is, you're not over that yet?
What?
Yeah, and like, I was just like, wow, they really wrote Lana and Whitney to be like really shitty in this episode. Because Whitney's insufferable in this episode. He's my worst person, and any scene he's in is terrible. But they just made the 2 of them so unlikable in this episode. And not charming at all. Like, if you compare like Clark and Whitney, and then like, I would say Lana and Chloe, like, Chloe comes off in her like 2 scenes in this episode very charming. Because she's so, like, bumbly on the horse, and then the whole scene with the kiss, and her reaction is hilarious. And Lana is just, like, pure ice queen, like, why aren't you doing what I want? But then, like, she's shitty to Clark, but then when she needs something, she's all up in his shit at the loft. And then once he gives her kind of any pushback, she gets huffy about it. I don't know, it was a weird episode for, like, that love triangle, love pentagram.
Yeah, she also asks, is it true Chloe kissed you? Which shows that she has some, which shows her interest still in the triangle, or pentagram.
And, I guess, what were your overall thoughts on this episode? Your favorite scene, favorite actor?
My favorite scene had to be, it was actually the scene between Rickman and Tippett, because of how intimidating that shot of his hand was, and the words, are you afraid or something?
That was a really good scene. My favorite scene was actually the last scene of the whole episode. I just thought it was it did everything that they wanted it to do, but it was such a great shot between the 2 of them.
This was this was a fantastic episode, and a big improvement over last week's episode.
Yeah, as much as this was like filler, there was a lot going on, both foreshadowing and then character building, because they did once again mention that Whitney's father was dying. There is more stuff between Clark and Lana's relationship. But we also get all the backstory kind of stuff with Lex.
My MVP is actually Rickman, Kyle, Tippett, and Lex. My least valuable player, Kristen Kirk.
Oh, I had Whitney as my worst. But yeah, they're both pretty terrible in this episode.
Actually, no. Let me take that back. My LVP is Warner Brothers.
That's funny. And my MVP is Lex. Rosenbaum just crushes in this episode. Because again, he gets to do so much. Because he gets to be like regular Lex, and then crazy, and then like worried Lex. And then also like annoyed at the doctor for like talking too much.
Yeah.
I do actually love, there's like when the doctor's like, my payment is normal, and Lex just gives like a look to Clark like, yeah, like, I don't know why I'm even looking at you, like, I know I'm paying for this. It's like brown bag on the desk. Like, it was such like a one little thing where he just throws a look at Clark, like, you do realize I am paying like a shit ton of money for this guy, right?
Yeah.
But overall, yeah, it was a very good episode. I thought when I originally read the synopsis that it was going to be kind of a throwaway, but there was a lot going on.
Oh, this is just some behind the scenes, like some trivia stuff. Have you ever heard Michael Rosenbaum talk about his occipital boner?
No.
When he shaved his head for the role, if you notice, whenever the back of Lex's head, there's a bone, what looks like a bone that you can clearly see.
No, like at the back, where like his head meets his neck kind of area.
In that general area.
Yeah, I think I'm literally touching the back of my head trying to figure out. Yeah, I kind of see what you mean.
And because it's really pronounced, and it was I forgot where he talked about it. It was some interview, and he just out of nowhere just started calling it his occipital boner. It's occipital bone, so that's where he actually got it. That's another that was another way to tell that he was wearing a skin cap in the finale.
Oh, because you don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only one I had was that I didn't even realize this, but throughout these first episodes, the characters, except for Whitney, are supposed to be freshmen, so they're 14 or 15, and they're driving a lot.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that until I read that in the thing. I was like, oh wait, yeah, like we see Clark driving like all the time, and he's supposed to be 15 years old-ish, so it's just funny.
The only thing, I can clearly see why they did it. One of the things about Man of Steel that they got right was the age for Clark to be developing his powers.
Oh yeah, well, I do think we talked about it, but like it makes so much more sense that it's like happening through puberty.
Yeah, that, and when he's in the infamous "should I have let them drown" scene, he has to be what, 13, 14? Or younger.
I thought he was younger. I thought maybe, like, very close. Maybe, like, I was thinking middle school, so that would be, like, they're, like, between, like, 11 and, like, 14 at the top. So, yeah, he'll be 13, 14. I don't know. It's hard to tell when kids are that age.
Yeah, and also the actor who plays Oliver's son on Arrow.
Yeah. But, yeah, like, that's all I had for this episode. Well, there were a couple little jokey remarks about, like, what Clark would do in his future. He's like, as long as I'm not wearing a suit and flying. And then there was the whole Lex talking about what do you call it? The book To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, as Ben referenced.
So that was kind of it. There was just a ton of foreshadowing in this episode, which was really good. And I believe the next episode is where we get to see the final part of the subplot that's been going on with Veronica. Is that her name, or Vanessa? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. And to be honest, the next episode is one of my favorites because not only does it have one of the Ashmores, I keep forgetting whether it's Sean or Aaron. I think it's Sean, but it's the episode where Clark loses his powers for.
Yeah, it's Sean Ashmore. So that is hilarious. I saw the picture. I was like, wait a second, is that the guy that played Jimmy? But no, it's his twin brother.
No, it's Iceman.
Oh, I didn't know they were brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Although it's no matter what, it was how they finished that Jimmy Olsen thing was so dumb in this show.
I can actually explain it. The Jimmy in season 6 at season 6 through 8?
Well, the Jimmy that we actually like get to live with for a while.
His name is Henry James Olsen.
Yes, but then his little brother grows up to look like him because it's the same actor.
Yeah, that is pretty weird.
Like, I would have felt better if they just went back to his twin brother to be Jimmy Olsen at the end. Because then they've been like, oh, they're close enough because they look like brothers because they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is actually one of the episodes I remember because this is like the first time they deal with like Clark living as a normal person.
And they also get to use the word Superboy in the episode. Albeit it's a newspaper, but still Superboy made it into the show.
Oh, I didn't realize. Apparently this character comes back in season 3 as well.
Yeah, it's the arc where Lionel is trying to. It's the arc with Morgan Edge. Lex is having mental problems, and it's Clark going in trying to rescue Lex, and has one of the saddest endings I've ever seen in Smallville.
Sorry, I was just reading some of the stuff of this episode, which is really interesting. So I was trying to remember, like, he steals Clark's powers through a meteorite crystal, right?
Yeah, and Clark gets struck by lightning on his heart.
Oh. Oh man, I did not realize this episode we just covered aired on my birthday,
Oh, that's
2002.
awesome.
So I don't remember what day of the week this aired, but yeah.
I think it was either.
I think they were Mondays.
Well, yes, Smallville shifted through the time this schedule many times.
Alright, but that is definitely an episode I'm excited to see. We can play the trailer right now.
In one instant, his powers will be taken and passed on to someone else.
I just don't understand what's wrong with me.
Your powers aren't coming back. You don't have to hide anything from me.
Nothing on this earth can stop me.
An all-new Smallville.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
There's something just for listeners. If I sound weird, it's because I had a toothache pulled, so just wanted to get that out there because I sound different compared to previous episodes.
I guess plugs. Check us out on the Phantom Zone. I'm sure we'll be covering, or have covered, Luke Cage at this point, which hopefully, Alan, you will watch at some point.
I gotta finish Daredevil, dude. I'm almost done with episode 8, so I just gotta finish out the last 4 or 5.
It's so good. I'm actually gonna probably watch 2 episodes of Luke Cage right after this.
To quote Connor, watch the damn show.
It's a good show. Like, I know that some people didn't like it as much, but I thought season 2 was very strong.
Yeah, I'm finding out more. I now see why Arlen was mad at me during Defenders, because there's so much in the groundwork, or there's so much groundwork being laid down in this season. Yeah,
there's a lot that ties into the hand. I didn't realize at first that you were talking about season 2. I thought you were talking about season 1, but yeah, there's a lot of, all the stuff with Stick is kind of really much more involved in season 2.
The Chast.
Yeah, the Chast.
Midland, was it Midland Circle?
Yes, Midland Circle, because Midland Circle, that's involved in all 3 shows. So here in Jessica Jones, and then in Luke Cage as well. They all have a connection to that spot.
Because, look, I'm used to the MCU way of doing things, and I thought Iron Fist was going to lead into everything. I mean, technically it does, but story-wise.
Yes and no. If you look at Defenders is definitely it's the 2 of them are the main characters.
Yeah.
But they also have the most connection to the hand, especially, all the stuff with Elektra, that's all in season 2 of Daredevil.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't like. It is definitely the weakest part of season 2 of Daredevil.
Well, Elektra?
Mm-hmm. When she comes in, it, changes the entire tone of the season. There's 3 parts to season 2 of Daredevil. There's the intro part, the first part, there's the Elektra part, and then there's, the kind of, so it's the beginning where it deals with the Punisher, and then we kind of leave him, and then you've been through the Elektra part, and now it's kind of the post part where Punisher, the whole post him in jail part.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see scenes with, D'Onofrio.
Yeah, so you're right at that point where that whole story, because basically the season 2 kind of where people don't like it is because we don't have Frank. Because we get so much Frank, and then Frank is gone, and we get instead Elektra, and then once Frank comes back, he's again awesome.
Yeah.
And this also ties a lot into the whole Punisher season as well. So did you watch Punisher?
Yeah, I saw Punisher.
Okay, because his whole story ties directly, it starts basically right from where his story ends in this season of Daredevil.
I rewatched the first episode of Punisher, then watched Warzone. That is just mind-boggling.
You have to listen to, I can't remember her name, but she wrote and directed that movie. She did How Did This Get Made, an episode where they reviewed that movie.
Oh my god.
Because she's actually a really good director. She's done a bunch of really good art stuff.
She also directed an episode of Arrow.
Yeah, she's very famous. She's French, but she read over a ton of comic books and then kind of created this. She just wanted something ultra violent. But I think one of the problems
that explains the first scene.
Yeah, I can't remember what she said, but I think the movie came out right after there was a big shooting, and it really hurt the movie.
That explains why well, also because of its ultra-violent nature, reviewers just panned it.
Yeah, so the director's name was Lexi Alexander. But yeah, she did a bunch of stuff. She's really interesting. And she directed an episode of Supergirl too. Actually, the first episode of Supergirl.
I'm not surprised.
And she directed, the first episode of one of the seasons of Arrow. Probably season 3, it looks like. Yeah, she did before this, she did a bunch of big European movies. They were I don't know how to explain them, art films kind of. But yeah, she's done, can't remember what else I listened to her. Maybe she got interviewed by Kevin Smith at some point. But her take on it was awesome because she actually wanted to like put Punisher comics out on the seats for reviewers so that they would know who the character was before they saw the movie. Because she was like, yeah, people don't really know a lot about this character because they've only been 2 movies, and the first one didn't even have him wearing the skull thing, which was the Dolph Lundgren one. So she was like, I think, so it came out in 2008, so maybe it was like Sandy Hook or something happened right before it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it basically killed, because it's literally just a dude shooting everybody. Because if you watch it, it has a lot that's similar to, I'm trying to think, what's that? I think it's like a Chinese movie where the guy goes through like the apartment complex. It's like kind of a kung fu movie. I can't remember what the name of it was. But like Daredevil season 1 bites a lot off of it with like the fight scene, the hallway scene.
I can also compare it to Dread.
Yeah, because that does a lot of it's because the ending of Warzone, it's all in that one apartment building. And it's almost like a video game levels, like how he goes through, and each level is a different gang, if I'm remembering that movie correctly.
I just love that scene where McGinty's guys are doing the flips. McGinty goes, one guy goes, boom.
Well, the best part of that, I can't remember, I believe, you have to listen to that episode of How This Get Made, because she talks about the guy who plays the crazy guy. I can't remember what his name is.
I know, the guy, Horace from Lost.
Yeah, well, one, because that guy is crazy in real life, because he's the one that's married like a 16-year-old girl.
Not anymore. They got divorced, thank God.
But like a lot of his stuff was all ad-libs, I believe.
I'm gonna get my applesauce.
Yeah, and like all his choices were just like kind of his, and they were like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like he's gotta be like, just play this character like completely cuckoo bananas, like off the wall.
Okay, enough Marvel talk. This is DC. You can follow me on Twitter at TheAlanMuir, Instagram at ComicsBoy. Visit losthorror.wordpress.com to find podcasts such as the Lost Horror Podcast with Arlen Haro and Eric Sayor. In October, there will be a big announcement, and if you liked the recent Video Game Hour, or the last 2 episodes of Video Game Hour, you'll be very excited. Rest in peace, Video Game Hour.
Alright, so I guess that wraps it up. So, I'm Luke Gonzalez, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
And I'm Alan Muir, and this podcast stands for Truth, Justice, and the American Way, and fuck you, WB.